Guys, we are in the Arizona desert, hence the reason we are by this giant saguaro cactus, and we are testing out the suspension on the T7. Ted Porter's Beamer Shop, we went through those guys for some tractive suspension, both rear shock and the front forks. We also went with the plus 25mm version, which makes this bike have an inch more travel, sit up a little bit taller, and I think it is freaking amazing. It's night and day difference compared to what we had on there before with the stock suspension. It just eats up all the bumps, but the reason you are here is to see the install. So stay tuned. I'll show you how to install the rear shock as well as the front fork cartridges, and then we'll take it out here in the desert and I'll show you what we put this through, enough to show you how much better that this suspension is than what the stock suspension is. Stay tuned. So I've got everything right here that comes in both kits. I've got the front cartridges here, as well as springs, the provided oil, instruction manual. And then I've got the lower bolts that hold the cartridges inside the fork, the preload spacers, some specialty tools that come along with it, fork caps, and then the rear is pretty easy. Comes with the rear shock, and it's literally unbolt your old one, bolt in your new one. I'll be working on the rear first, so if you bought the cartridges and you already have the rear shock, or you're not interested in doing the rear shock, check out the chapters below and you can fast forward and jump to the cartridges. But that being said, let's go ahead and we'll dive right into replacing the rear shock. So as I said, replacing the rear shock is fairly simple. Right now I have my bike stand. This bike does not have a center stand, so I went ahead and just put it on a dirt bike stand, and then I've got it secured to the rafters just so it doesn't fall off or tip over. Really simple. What we're going to be doing here is we're going to be moving this panel right here on the right side, and maybe even the panel on the left side, just to get better access. But you'll see we've got the linkage bolts here that have to come out, as well as, let's see if you can see it through right about there, the top bolt there for the shock. So I'll go ahead and I'll get those panels removed. I'll go ahead and get those panels removed and just kind of walk you through step by step on how to remove the rear shock. Okay, so this panel has 3 T27 bolts holding it on. I use this ratchet all the time. It's an older Milwaukee 12-volt ratchet. Just phenomenal. Makes things way, way easier. Take your 3 bolts, set them off to the side, and then your panel just has a rubber grommet. Pop it off. So now we can easily access that bolt right there in the middle of your screen. That is the top bolt for the shock. There's a nut on this side, and on the other side is a retainer. I'll walk you around over there. So you've got the bolt right there, and then there is a retainer on that bolt that keeps it from turning. So it's pretty nice because you can just put an impact on it and zip that nut right off from the right side of the motorcycle and not have to worry about, you know, having to hold it and being all awkward. So we'll go ahead and do that. So again, we're gonna go ahead and shoot for that bolt right there. This is a 17mm. I'm just gonna put my impact on it and zip it off. Got that nut. Set it off to the side. So at this point, we're gonna leave the bolt in there, and then we're gonna work on the lower linkage bolt. That way, so we got our linkage down here. We're gonna work on this lower bolt first. Again, that is a 17. See if we don't have to hold this one. Yep, that one comes right out without having to hold the back side. And now we'll do the lower shock bolt, which is a 14mm. So now, what we're gonna do is we'll take a little bit of pressure off the back wheel and we'll push out the first one. And then the second, and that linkage will fall right out of the way. So at this point, you want to be really careful because right now the swing arm is resting against the exhaust, and you don't want to put a whole lot of pressure on it to mess up, you know, or dent your exhaust or scratch your swing arm or anything like that. So just be aware of that. All right, so sorry, I got a little bit ahead of myself, forgot to hit record. So we were here. Now you're thinking, well, Kyle, you're gonna have to remove the swing arm, or you're gonna have to remove the skid plate to get this linkage out of the way, and that's just simply not true. with having the bike up off of the ground right now and up off of the stand, let me just show you what we're gonna do. So I did this the exact same way with my Africa Twin, and even though I did it on video, people still told me it was impossible. But I don't understand. Some people will just argue with absolutely anything on the internet. So all you're gonna do is hold your shock, lift your swing arm, and it comes right out. Again, be careful with your swing arm against your exhaust, but I mean, literally easy as that. You don't have to remove the skid plate, any more linkage. It's literally 3 bolts, lift the swing arm, and the shock comes out. That was virtually the exact same way on the Honda Africa Twin. And again, even though I showed that in the video, people still thought I had some kind of like movie magic or something and did not believe because they said they couldn't figure it out. Blows my mind. Okay, so now that we have the old rear shock out of the way, we'll go ahead and we'll grab our new fancy smancy Tractive Rear shock. On this shock, you do have a high speed and a low speed compression adjustment, as well as a rebound right here down at the bottom, as well as your preload adjustment here. So in the instruction manual they give you, there are some clicker adjustments, fairly simple out of the box, just kind of a baseline starting point. It's 10 clicks, 10 clicks, and 10 clicks on the rebound. And then 23, at least on this shock, because this is the Extreme Pro, this is a 23 millimeters of preload. So we'll go ahead and make sure that our clickers are in fact where they are supposed to be, and then we'll slap this bad boy in there. Okay, so to install the rear shock, I'm gonna cheat a little bit. So I put a strap around the back of the bike, kind of through the luggage racks and around the tire to hold that up, just because it does make it easier to use 2 hands to put that shock up into that space. So little trick there just to kind of show you what I did. Gets the tire up all the way compressed in there and opens up that space like crazy so you can get the shock in there and then get that top bolt in there, because you do need 2 hands, one to hold it in there and then one to kind of get the bolt in. And then from there you can let the tire down and then do all the things down here with the linkage. So we got our shock bolt here from the other side. I'm gonna put a little bit of lube on it just because it doesn't even look like from the factory that it had on there. I don't know that it actually needs it on there, but I mean, I like where metal rides on metal, I like to have a little bit of lubrication. So we'll go ahead and do that. I'm gonna head and grease up all 3 of the bolts just to save time. Okay, so I'm going to carefully feed this up through here. Hopefully not to scratch anything because it's so pretty. This preload adjuster does stick out quite a bit more than what the factory one does. So we're gonna try to snake this up in there, but we may have to remove these 2 bolts just to be able to get that preload adjuster in there and then put it back on. But we'll see if we can get it up in there, and then if not, then we'll go that route. But we're doing this for the first time just like you are, so let's see what we can do. Yep, a little tighter, so I think we're gonna have to pull this off and see if we can get it, pull these 2 bolts off and see if we can get in there without that. So we went ahead and removed the preload adjuster from the bracket. There's virtually no instructions on this. It tells you how to install it. I think they kind of assume that this is getting done at a service shop. But that being said, we're gonna go ahead and now feed this up through there first. Give ourselves a lot of room. There we go. Got that in place. So now we're gonna walk around the other side and we'll cram this upper shock bolt in. Easy. If you have a helper, it's nice because on this side, you can't see, on this side, you have a little bracket here that wants to kind of get in the way of the bolt. But no big deal, just kind of reach around and push it through. Now we're gonna line up our bottom of our shock with the left-hand hole here on the linkage. Take a little bit of wiggling. It's kind of a tight fit. So at this point, I went ahead and I lowered my swing arm just a little bit because we have to line up these holes here. And you know, it's kind of a pain if you're fighting against a ratchet strap. So I'm just gonna finger tight this bolt on for the lower shock bolt. And now we're gonna run our linkage up and then just use our leg to kind of raise the swing arm just ever so slightly to run that bolt through. Now, remember our washer, don't forget that. And then our 17 millimeter, the thinner of the two 17 millimeter nuts. Okay, so that one's on. Now we can take our upper collared 17 millimeter nut and put it on the upper shock bolt. That one's done. Moving over to the lower bolt. Alrighty. Switching back over to the 17 and 48. All right. That wraps that up. So now that we've got everything all torqued down, we'll go ahead and we'll get this preload adjuster back where it belongs. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this rear cover on, and that pretty much wraps up the rear shock swap. Say that 5 times fast. But this actually didn't take that long. Even with filming, this was maybe a 20-minute process, and really anybody can do this at home with simple hand tools. It does help to get the bike elevated. If you have a center stand, that will really help. But just putting it up on the dirt bike stand also helped as well. So if you have any questions about this process, please hit me in the comments below and I'll answer anything I possibly can. That being said, we're gonna go ahead and move forward to the front cartridges. Okay, so over here at the front of the bike, we've got our front forks. And I'm really not gonna go step by step on how to remove your forks. It's pretty dang simple. Plus, not everybody has, you know, these guards and the fender and all that good stuff. If you can't remove your front fork, then you probably should not be doing this project, I would assume, because it's not that technical. So I'm just going to remove my front wheel by removing the front axle, loosen these pinch bolts, remove these guards here, and then you've got pinch bolts here and up here that you'll go ahead and remove, and you'll slide your forks out, and we'll bring those over to the workbench, and I'll see you over there. Okay, so we have our fork legs off the motorcycle. We have our left one right here in the front and our right one here in the rear, with the way we're looking at it. So the left leg, they suggest that be compression and that the right leg be rebound, right rebound. So that way it kind of makes sense. You can always remember which leg is the rebound leg. So we'll just go ahead and work on the compression leg first, and I'll show you how to disassemble and put it back together. So one thing I'm not going to do in this video is I'm not going to replace the fork seals and bushings. A lot of times it's suggested that you do that if you have several miles on these, but I've only got about 2,000 miles on these forks, so they're practically new, and they don't really need to be, they don't really need to be replaced. There's no leaks, no tears, anything like that in the dust boots. So we're going to go ahead and just do this whole process without breaking the forks down, taking them completely apart, which is actually a lot quicker. Saves you some time, and if you have a T7 and your forks are in good condition and you don't need to replace your fork seals, it's totally up to you. If you're getting really close to your service interval though, I would highly suggest replacing your fork seals and bushings, just because you're already in there and you might as well just do it. But in this case, we're not there yet, so we're gonna go ahead and just replace the cartridges themselves. So we have our fork leg set up here in a set of soft jaws in the vise. We're gonna go ahead and back off our needle all the way out. And then we're gonna go ahead and remove our cap. It helps if I grab the right wrench. It's a 19. Slowly pull that up a little bit. So there is a nut here at the top of your cartridge. Put your wrench on that, take your 19, and you're going to remove the cap. It doesn't hurt anything for everything to fall down inside there. You're going to compress the fork anyway. So take your cap, set it off to the side, grab your fork leg, slowly push it up, and grab your spring, let some of that oil drain off. Definitely helps to have a good amount of rags laying around because this is not the cleanest job. So now I'm going to remove my fork from the vise and I'm going to drain the rest of the oil out into a catch pan. Definitely helps to pump the cartridge and get any oil out of there. You can even pump the leg. So now here at the bottom of the fork leg, you've got your the bottom bolt that holds the cartridge in. There's also a black plastic plug right in there. So we're going to pry that plug out and we'll have access to that bolt there. Just a regular flathead screwdriver. I can do this here without knocking my camera over. Yep, too easy. This plug is in there basically just to keep one, your adjuster clean, and then two, keep from a bunch of grime getting in there from not being able to access that bolt. So we'll go ahead and we'll back this all the way off as well. So I've had this work before where I can use an impact on the bottom where I don't have to use the special tool that holds the cartridge inside here. And sometimes you can just zip them out if you get lucky. We're gonna see if by chance we are that lucky. I don't expect that we will be, but we're gonna give it a shot. So this is a larger 14 millimeter Allen. So we're gonna put that in here and just see if by chance we can zip it off. So it was enough to break it loose, but not enough to pull it out of the cartridge. So one thing that I learned, so we have to remove this nut here, this guide for the spring. So once you have your nut and your guide off, I'll see if I can show you down inside what we're looking at. So down inside the fork there, really hard to capture that with the camera. There was what looks like it's like this X piece, and it takes a special tool down inside. But what I saw on another video online is if you take a 3/4 inch piece of square tubing or a 19 millimeter piece of square tubing, this will actually slide right over the cartridge rod, and it fits pretty much just perfectly right down inside there. So then you can take your hex head or your Allen on the bottom. So I've got my Allen here, I've got holding the top here, and now we should be free. And now our entire cartridge just slides right out. And now I'm going to set this off to the side. This bottom bolt here does have an O-ring on it, so even though it's free, it still kind of hangs in there. So take a pair of pliers, grab it, and you should be able to pull it right out. I just took the Allen back on there, kind of put it in a bind at an angle, pulled it, and now we're free. And there it is. So now at this point, if you were going to replace your bushings and your seals, you would separate these legs by taking this dust seal, sliding it down, and then removing the clip that's on the inside, and so on. There's another video, there's plenty of videos online actually on how to do that. Again, luckily we're not doing that now. It's not much more of a step, but again, these seals are in great shape and I'm just not going to replace them. So what you want to do at this point also is clean out any more residual oil that's left in the fork tube. A great way to do that is using some suspension clean. This Maxima suspension cleaner is great for that. It doesn't harm any seals or bushings or anything like that. So you can literally just spray it down inside and just wash out the rest of the tube. So we'll go ahead and do that, get everything prepped to put the new cartridge in. Okay, so on our new cartridges, it comes banded to keep them all together. Also for packing purposes, keeps them small. But if you're curious on which one goes where, on the label here, it says compression and rebound is blacked out. On the rebound, compression is blacked out and rebound is visible. So this is the compression cartridge. So we'll go ahead and put the compression cartridge in this left side fork. Just taking the band off. It's going to want to extend because it is a compression fork. Get these little plastic things off here. And now really all we do is slide it down inside the chamber very gently to where it bottoms out. We take our new provided bottom bolts. So you notice there's no compression, or excuse me, no adjustment on the bottom, because the adjustment's all done at the top of the fork on these, versus on the others you'd have to adjust both compression and rebound on each fork. And again, on these you have your compression on your left side and your rebound on the other side, so there's no need to ever bend down and have to adjust the bottom of the fork. So we'll go ahead, put a little bit of oil on this O-ring here so it seals. So we've got our bottom bolts here. I'm gonna put just a very tiny amount of blue Loctite on this, just to ensure it doesn't come out. I mean, we're not using very much at all, just enough to ensure that that gets a good bite. And then we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna tighten it down as tight as we can get it by hand without a wrench on it. So when looking at the spec sheet here, it says the air chamber is 120 millimeters, which is right at about 4 3/4 inches. And when we move over here to our fork, see if I can show you down inside here. So the top of the cartridge right there, right where the rod meets that round silver ring, that is actually right at almost exactly 120 millimeters or 4 3/4 inches. So we're gonna go ahead and use the provided oil they gave us, and we're gonna fill to that spot. So you're probably thinking, holy moly, 15 weight for fork oil? That seems super heavy. Well, if you think about it, the 15 weight is really only used to lubricate the cartridge itself. It's not made or being used for any dampening or rebound, because it is a closed cartridge fork. So all of the dampening and rebound is going to be happening inside the cartridge itself. This is just to lubricate everything inside there. And who knows, maybe with the fact that it's a little bit thicker, you'll have less seepage throughout the seals and everything down the road. And who knows, maybe it'll help save your fork seals. I don't really know if that's the case or not, but that being said, we're just going to take this and we're going to fill to the 120 millimeter mark as the instructions say from the top. So I've got my vise here, and I'm using a stool to hold that fork compressed. That way everything's compressed down there, and then should be able to see just right at the mark there. Now we're going to take our spring, slide it over down inside there, and then it comes with our spacers. Now the spacers are for kind of the initial preload. So we got our spacers, and we're going to make sure and grab our correct cap here, our compression cap. Slide that on and thread our cap on. So from here, if you take your spacers and you split them, put 2 on the bottom, 2 on the top, you can easily get your wrench on there. And then you take the provided special spanner they give you here, throw that on, and finish tightening up your fork cap. Just get this nice and snug, not too tight, just enough to where it's not gonna back itself off. Slip that up in there. And then again, from the factory, it should come set, but I just double check my settings. Again, this is 10 clicks. 1, 2, 10 from being maxed out. So if you want to double check them, take them, reel them all the way in until they're snug. Don't over tighten them by any means. It'll break the needle, and then back them off. In this case, it's 10. We'll go ahead and we'll loosen our fork here. Bring our upper tube to our cap. And grab our special wrench again. So being that this is a special wrench and that there is no way to get an actual socket on here to torque it down, I couldn't find an actual torque spec, so we're just going to get it nice and snug by being able to hold it with our vise here. If you don't have a vise, another way you could do this would be just to put it inside the motorcycle. Once you get your triple clamp and everything tightened up, then you can go back and just double check and make sure everything's tight. This doesn't have to be He-Man tight, just get it nice and snug to where it's not going to back off for any reason. So we got our fork leg in the vise here, and we're going to go ahead and torque it to 65 Newton meters. Okay, so the compression leg is done. I'm gonna work on the rebound leg. It is the exact same process, so I'm not gonna refilm all this just to show you the same process. We'll get this rebound leg done and we'll get it back on the motorcycle, and then we'll take it out in the desert and we'll give it a real world test, and I'll let you know my first impressions. See you there. So one of the first things I noticed with this suspension is that there's very little dive in the front end like it normally has. It really, even like mashing the front brake, like right now I'm speeding up 30 to 40 miles an hour. Very little dive, very controlled. Stop sign, I'm gonna come over here, I'm gonna anchor the brakes. Yeah, it's so much more controlled. I mean, it does dive, it's going to, that's just how physics works, but same. So much better than what it was. All in all, I'm very impressed with this suspension. For general road riding, cornering, whatever you throw at it, this suspension is a huge upgrade from the stock suspension. Yeah, this suspension is awesome. So off-road, all these baby head looking rocks that are underneath the ground here, they just, the front forks soak it all up, and the back very planted. So before it would just, you know, you would kind of get moved off track, and with the suspension the way it is and the steering stabilizer, it's super planted now. Just, I mean, rolls over all that. It's insane. All right, guys, we had an amazing time making this video. Had so much fun out here in the desert. This Tractive Extreme Pro, both front and rear, makes all the difference in its proper suspension for this bike. I wish it would have come with something similar like this to begin with from the factory, but now that we've got it taken care of, this bike is dialed for doing any kind of adventure that you'd want to do. I hope the install helped you out, both front and rear. If you have any questions, definitely hit me in the comments below. I'd love to answer anything you have, and also we're gonna go take this bike and go do some more because we still have a lot of sunlight left and a lot of fun to be had. So we'll see you in the next one.